Hello and welcome. Here is another video about SMMware, software for handling sales, project management, operations, and more. Today we'll discuss invoices in SMMware. Okay, let's begin. Here we are on the SMMware homepage. We're going to go to the admin menu item and then down to Invoice Manager. Before we go any further, we're going to take a detour, look at an associate profile, and point out that in order to work with invoices, you need the Manage Invoices permission to be set. Now back on the invoice listing page at the top, we have a gray bar, which is a filter and has various criteria that you can set. You can also export that. Below, you'll see the listing of invoices. We're going to start a new invoice. We'll select the job, click on Go, which brings us to our initial invoice page. SMMware has two different kinds of invoices, itemized and a flat amount. The itemized type will pull in hours and expense and other entries based on actual data put into the system. This is in contrast to assuming that hours and expenses on the quote are precisely what wound up happening. The other kind of invoice is the flat amount. This is useful if you are selling packages for a set dollar amount. It's also useful for reflecting a deposit that the client has given you. But for now, we're going to stick with the itemized invoice type. We're going to set a start date and an end date. I'm going to click on Scan for Line Items, and that will pull in all the various entries in the system. From here, we can still edit the entries and add more, both hours, expenses, flat fees, and mileage charges. Flat fees, again, being typically administrative charges, things where you are setting the amount unrelated to a quantity of things. So instead of saying it's 5 hours times this rate, we're just saying it's a grand total of this fee. Back up here at the top, I'll point out that this is where the invoice number goes. You can go into the system settings and put in a prefix, and you can also put in a suffix as you go. Could be V1, V2 sometimes. SMMware offers different status levels. Preliminary means that it is not a finished invoice. You should not send it to the client. SMMware also has an optional feature for approval of invoices. The thinking is that your team leads were on site, they know which workers were there, and they know which worker was done, so you might want them to go ahead and look it over and approve it. So when you are ready, you set this to finalized, and then the team lead will see it in their list and approve it. At that point, it'll be TL approved, which means team lead approved. Again, that is an optional feature, so you always have the option of just skipping ahead to the approved stage. When you do set this to send it to client, SMMware will fill in the due date for you. Moving down the page, we have a notes section for that will appear on the invoice, and we have a notes section that is just for internal company use. It will not appear on the invoice that the client sees. Scrolling down a little bit further, sometimes you have to send the invoice to where the client is moving from. Sometimes you have to send it to where they're moving to, in which case you can pick from the different addresses in this list. And sometimes someone is helping pay for the overall project, and they need an invoice that shows them as the payer, and you can override who the payer appears to be. You can type in the name of the entity here, and it will SMMware will fill in the fields for the addresses. So now we're going to change this to team lead approved and save that. And now instead of the Scan for Line Items button, SMMware shows you some PDF buttons. SMMware offers 3 different formats of PDF, and you can choose from any format whenever you like, depending on what you think will work best with your client. The summary version will only show high-level categories, and it might be useful if you have a client who tends to argue more as you show them more information. On the other hand, you may have some clients where the more information you show them, the more comfortable they are with why the grand total is what it is. And so showing them the detailed version will make them comfortable signing off faster. The detailed version does have an hourly entry for every day and every employee. So if you have 5 employees on location on 2 different days, you'll have 10 different entries, 5 times 2. If the detailed version starts to get particularly long, you can use the roll-up version, and it will take all the entries for a given day and roll it up into one line and show that there were this many employees and the subtotal for that day. There's another format for the roll-up invoice, which is based on where you roll it up based on the job codes. You can also email the PDF of the invoice to your client. SMMware will pre-fill some of the fields here for the email, the who it's going to, the subject, and the body. This comes from the settings editor, but then you can tweak it for this particular situation as needed. Before we forget, going back down the page to the bottom, we have a section for adjustments. So if something gets broken, you can create an entry for it there. We also have a section for deposits if the client is giving you some money in advance. If you're integrating your SMMware site with QuickBooks, you'll see a button here, either QBO add or QBD add, depending on which one you're using. And SMMware will copy over the invoice, including the lower level items such as the individual hourly entries and expenses, before it copies over the actual invoice. For more details on our QuickBooks integration, please see our separate video. Now we're going to jump over to the settings editor. Go to Admin and Settings. We're going to look at a few settings that are relevant to the invoices. I'm just going to go down the line. You can say whether you're going to want approval or not from the team leads here. When you first get your SMMware site, you can set an invoice starting number here, and once you have your first invoice, that number does get locked in. This is where you can put in your prefix. You can put in a default for the suffix. At the bottom of the invoice, there's a space where you can put in a signature, and you can determine whether it's going to appear or not, and you can also format that signature. Below the signature, there's a spot for an invoice late notice that you can have if you like. Some people like to include the sold hours in the invoice. When you enter expenses into SMMware, you can upload images of the receipts. And here's where you can tell SMMware that you would like to append those images to the bottom of your invoice. I mentioned before that your roll-up format can be either based on job codes or by date, and here's where you can set that. You can set SMMware not to display the options for the summary, the detail, or the roll-up PDFs. By default, SMMware will show that a given hourly entry is perhaps 4 hours. But you can also have SMMware include that the time was from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. or something like that. You can either have the summarized or the detailed format for the supplies/inventory table in an invoice. These two settings are for the profitability report, which is a separate topic. Finally, we have the defaults for when you're emailing PDFs as attachments, the default subject, and the default contents. And that sums up our overview of using invoices in SMMware. To find out more, you can go to youtube.com/SMMware, or you can visit our corporate website at www.smmmware.com. We appreciate your time and hope to talk to you soon. Thank you.